What's going on, guys? It's Brandon back here again today for the first time in about a week and a half. I'm going to be honest. College has kind of just kicked my butt down the road these last couple weeks. I finally feel like I've caught up. I've gotten to the groove of things. And I now have time to make a video. I have not had time. I've had work. I've had extracurricular activities. I've been on the broadcast program at college, so that's been very fun. I will say, being part of the broadcast program, I've been able to do my own segment. I've been able to do basically a rundown of a bunch of Bears stuff, football stuff. So that's pretty cool. But now we're back on the main channel. Don't even get me started on the gaming channel. I'm not sure when I'll have another video up on that. But today we're finally going to do the 2021-22 season. I want to get this series done quick because I'm not having much time. Season's right around the corner. Preseason starts in about a week and a half from now, I believe. For the Hawks, that is. It starts about a week for everyone else. So to get everything done, I want to get 2 more seasons done after this in 2023 and 2024. Then I got to do preseason stuff. I got to do BFRs for those. That's got to be started. I'm going to have to do predictions for each division, and I'm going to have to do predictions for the entire league for my first power rankings. And after that, we'll see. We'll see where we go from there. So, to start off in the Central Division, Colorado wins the Central Division in a year where the playoff teams were decided pretty much in January. 56-19-7 record, 119 points. Absolute dominant year by Colorado. Minnesota, 53-22-7, 113 points. St. Louis, 49-22-11, 109 points. This is also the first season we're back with 82 games in a long time. It's been since 2018-19 that we've had a full season, full 82 games. Divisions are back to normal, and now we have 32 teams in the league with the addition of the Seattle Kraken. The Dallas Stars are back in the playoffs after a year out at 46-30-6 with 98 points. Nashville, last team in at 45-30-7, 97 points. And at this point, Nashville looks like they're on the downturn. Winnipeg out of the playoffs at 39-32-11, 89 points as they fall out. Chicago, 28-42-12, 68 points in a miserable year. That was a year they got Fleury, they got Jones, they got Johnson, and it looked like this team was going to hop right back into a playoff spot, and no. Arizona, 25-50-7, 57 points. This was their big tank year, and they don't end up winning first overall as per usual. In the Pacific Division, Calgary is back in the playoffs, and they win the division at 50-21-11, 111 points. This was the year that felt like Calgary finally lived up to the expectation, and it didn't last long. Edmonton, 49-27-6, 104 points. The LA Kings jump back into the playoffs for the first time in about 5 years. 44-27-11, 99 points. Vegas falls out of the playoffs for the first time in their existence. 43-31-8, 94 points. I believe it was the Hawks that knocked them out of playoff contention, and the reason why was injuries. The Vegas was injured to hell and back throughout this season, and it's remarkable they had 43 wins. Vancouver, this is the Bruce Boudreau. He comes in and takes over a year and gets them to a 40-30-12 record, 92 points. And people were very excited in Vancouver for the next season. And of course, it wasn't until this past season that things really got going. San Jose, 32-37-13, 77 points. Anaheim, 31-37-14, 76 points. Seattle, 27-49-6, 60 points for their first season. Nothing like Vegas. Vegas had over 100 points. And Seattle, 60 points was a lot more of a realistic expansion team, and even 27 wins, and I thought they'd be better. I remember saying at the time they finished third of their division, they looked like it was a decent team out of the gate, and goaltending kind of just failed out. Drieger was not healthy, Grubauer sucked, and it was not good. In the East, Florida wins the President's Trophy, which I predicted. This is also the first year I covered on the channel. I'm not sure if I mentioned that, but this is the first season I covered on the channel. But Florida going 58-18-6, 122 points. I knew before the year started they were going to be the best team in the league, and I was happy to be proven right. Toronto 54-21-7, 115 points. Tampa Bay 51-23-8, 110 points. Boston 51-26-5, 109 points. 4 teams in one division with 50-plus wins is absolutely insanity. You can see the point gap here. Boston's at 109 points. Buffalo has 75 points. That's how big the gap was. You knew who was making the playoffs and who wasn't. It wasn't close. And then in the West, Vegas was kind of close to Nashville or Dallas, but overall, Vegas was the only one that was really close. Vancouver was they had to have a really good stretch to finish in. It was pretty solid overall. Buffalo finishes below the playoff line at 32, 39, and 11, 75 points. Detroit, 32, 40, and 10, 74 points. Ottawa, 33, 42, and 7, 73 points. Montreal, after going to the final, falls off the map completely. No Shea Weber, no Eric Stahl, no Carey Price, there was a lot of missing pieces from their cup run, and they end up going 22, 49, and 11 for 55 points. They finished below Arizona, who was trying to be bad, and wow, it was just an absolute collapse by the Montreal Canadiens. In the Metro, Carolina wins the division at 54, 20, and 8, 116 points. Point totals were higher than I've ever seen in this season. The good teams were really good, and the bad teams were really bad. The Rangers are back in the playoffs at 52, 24, and 6, 110 points. Pittsburgh, 46, 25, and 11, 103 points. In Washington, 44, 26, and 12, 102. That's just 100 points. So even between the wild card 2 and the Islanders, which were the closest team to be out of the playoffs, that's a 16-point gap. Yeah. The Islanders fall out of the playoffs because, one reason people gave is because they had their first 13 games on the road, which is viable. Their new stadium wasn't finished yet, and so they started off on the road for quite a long time, and they didn't have a great stretch. 37, 35, and 10, 84 points. Columbus, 37, 38, and 7, 81 points. New Jersey, 27, 46, and 9, 63 points. And the lowly Philadelphia Flyers, 25, 46, and 11. If my maths are correct, that'd be 30. Yep, that's right. 61 points for them. In the playoffs, number 1, C1 Colorado faces off against wildcard 2 Nashville, and oh my gosh, that was murder. It's a 4-game sweep, and I remember Connor Ingram standing on his head in Game 2 trying to get them to win, and he just could not. Cale Makar eventually gets it by him, but Connor Ingram's legacy game was in that moment. As my camera's freezing up a bit. Are we good? I think we're good. C2 Minnesota plays C3 St. Louis. St. Louis takes out Minnesota in 6, and that was the only series that I predicted wrong at that moment. And I was very proud of myself that was the only one. My camera really needs to stop freezing. P1 Calgary in wildcard 1 Dallas. Calgary nearly blows it. Jake Ottinger was playing out of his mind. It's a 7-game series, and of course the Game 7 OT winner goes to Johnny Gaudreau. That's probably the biggest highlight of his career, and it was a great moment. I remember staying up for that game. P2 and P3, Edmonton and LA. Edmonton takes that series in 7 games. This was LA's first time back in the playoffs, so people didn't expect them to beat the Oilers, but people figured that they'd be back next year and be better. So for the Kings, they haven't gotten over that hump in the last 3 years. And in fact, they've gotten worse. They got eliminated in 7 this year, 6 the next, and 5 this previous year. In the East, Florida A1 versus Washington is the wild card 2. Washington gave Florida a scare. Washington probably should have won the series. They shot themselves in the foot. I believe it was Nick Jensen who missed the empty net. Florida comes down the ice and scores, as they were the Cardiac Cats that year. And 6 games, Florida beats Washington. Win their first series since 1996. I believe that was, I want to say 20, how many years is that? 1922 to 1996. Is that 26 years? Wow. Toronto A2 versus Tampa Bay A3. And we all know how this went. I predicted it. Tampa Bay in 7. And I remember that Game 7 felt different. I kind of felt sorry for Toronto for the first time in my life. And then when they won, I kind of just felt a sense of emptiness. Like, wow, they won. So there's no more joke. The Boston joke still exists. Carolina and Boston, M1 versus Wildcard 1, although Boston had 51 wins and they were a Wildcard 1. Carolina wins that one in 7. The home team wins every game in that series. And then M2 versus M3, the Rangers and the Penguins. Pittsburgh had a 3-1 series lead, and Louis Domingue came in Game 1 after both. I think Jari was hurt, then DeSmith got hurt, and then Domingue came in, and that triple overtime game in Game 1, he was the star. And then Pittsburgh wins 3-2 at the next three. They're up 3-1. The Rangers win games 5 and 7, I want to say, in overtime. And they came back in all those games. So the Rangers finally back on top of the Penguins. First time they beat them in a series since, I want to say, 2015. And a lot of 7-game series. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7-game series, plus 2 6-game series. And then you had 1 4-game series in that first round. Long first round. In the second round, C1 Colorado versus C3 St. Louis. Colorado wins that one in 6 in a very ugly series, both on and off the ice. I remember some threats being put around. And I remember Nathan McKinnon scoring the hat trick in a game that they'd inevitably lose, in which they really shouldn't have. Colorado should have won that series in 5. St. Louis got lucky in that one of those games. Calgary and Edmonton, P1 versus P2. The Battle of Alberta was back for the first time in over 30 years, and people were so excited, and it ended in 5. Edmonton wins that series in 5. Great series, lots of goal scoring. It was just way too short. And I'm frozen again. Okay, we're good. I don't know. Why do I keep... Nope. Why do I keep freezing? Okay, wait. I'm going to wait until it's... Are we going to go? Are we frozen? We're still stuck here? Alright. Oh. Nope. What's going on here? Why is the camera doing this stuff? Are we good? Okay, I think we're back. Does another one like that, I'm just going to restart the video. And, oh my gosh. Come on. What the heck is going on here? Alright, there. Did that help? I think that helped. Okay, so in the second round, continuing, I'm keeping an eye on it now. Florida and Tampa. We got the Battle of Florida in back-to-back years. Tampa wins again, this time in 4. A3 beats A1 in 4. The President's Trophy winners are out. And Florida kind of keeps the reputation they have until this year. Until last year, really. M1 versus M2, Carolina and the Rangers. The home team wins every game again until Game 7, where the Rangers beat Carolina. Carolina won 7 games in that playoff. All of them at home. You can't win on the road. You can't win a series. Sorry. Unless it's the first round against Boston. In the conference final, C1 Colorado versus P2 Edmonton, and Colorado sweeps them in 4. Arturi Lehkonen sends his team to the Stanley Cup final in overtime for the second year in a row, and that was quite a moment, I will say, for Colorado. I was rooting for Colorado. Not in that series. I was rooting for Duncan Keith for Edmonton to get one more cup, but for Colorado, good for them. Good to be back because they had expectation to do so. Tampa Bay A3 and the Rangers M2. Rangers had a 2-game-to-none series lead, and I thought they were going to do it. I thought they were going to knock out Tampa. And one shift in Game 3 switched the entire complexion of the series. Tampa wins 4 straight. They win that series in 6, and they go to their 3rd straight Stanley Cup final, something unseen in the salary cap era. C1 Colorado versus A3 Tampa Bay in the final. Game 1, Colorado wins 4-3 in overtime. Game 2, Colorado wins 7-0. That game started and ended early. Burakovsky got the winner in the first overtime. In the overtime, I believe, in Game 1. Game 3, Tampa wins 6-2 to put some doubt into those who want Colorado to win's minds. But Colorado wins 3-2 in overtime off Nazem Kadri, who scored a goal that was similar to Patrick Kane's in 2010 that no one saw go in apparently except Bowen Byram, who was the guy pointing at the net, and then everyone realized it was in the net. Game 5, 3-2 Tampa victory right there. And then Game 6, Colorado wins 2-1 to win the series in Tampa after losing at home. And they win their 3rd Stanley Cup and are the only team to be undefeated in the Stanley Cup final that's had more than one Stanley Cup. 3-0 for Colorado. McDavid led the playoffs in points, and he was out in the 3rd round. 16 games played, 10 goals, 23 assists. That's 11 goals, 23 assists. 10 goals, 23 assists, 33 points. There we go. Draisaitl, he's 2nd in points. 16 games, 7 goals, 25 assists, 32 points. Makar is the closest on the Avalanche. He ends up winning the Conn Smythe. 20 games played, 8 goals, 20 assists, 29 points, or that's 21 assists. And Kucherov leads Tampa, as usual. 23 games played, 8 goals, 19 assists, 27 points. In terms of goaltending, Ottinger leads the playoffs, because I want to point out some goaltenders here. 1 shutout, 3-4 record, 1.81 goals against average, and a .954 save percentage. I think that's 4. I'm not sure if that's 9 or 4, but either way, holy cow. Darcy Kemper, 10-4, 1 shutout, 2.57 goals against average, and .912 save percentage. He gets hurt in those playoffs, so him and Francois kind of split the net. Speaking of Francois, who's now retired, he goes 6-0 with 1 shutout, 2.81 goals against average, and a .906 save percentage. Vasilevsky goes 14-9 with 1 shutout, 2.52 goals against average, and a .922 save percentage. Award winners. Art Ross goes to who else but Connor McDavid of the Edmonton Oilers, 44 goals, 79 assists, 123 points for McDavid. And he was just getting started, did we know? The Masterton goes to Carey Price, the Montreal Canadiens, who came back and played, I believe, 5 games at the end of the season, and then he would never play again. The Calder goes to Moritz Seider of Detroit, the Conn Smythe to Cale Makar of Colorado. This is Makar's big year. Selke goes to Patrice Bergeron of Boston. The Hart, because who else does it go to? The Hart goes to Austin Matthews of the Toronto Maple Leafs because he scored 60. Jack Adams goes to Darryl Sutter of the Calgary Flames. The Norris goes to Cale Makar as well. The Clancy goes to PK Subban of the New Jersey Devils. The Lady Byng goes to Kyle Connor of the Winnipeg Jets. The Lindsay goes to Austin Matthews of the Toronto Maple Leafs. The Messier goes to Anze Kopitar of the LA Kings. The Rocket Richard goes to Austin Matthews, who had 60 goals. The Vezina Trophy goes to Igor Shesterkin, 36, 13-4, 935 save percentage, and a 2.07 goals against average with 6 shutouts. The Jennings is split between Frederik Andersen and Antti Ranta of Carolina. First team All-Stars, Johnny Gaudreau on the left wing, rest in peace, Austin Matthews down the middle, and Mitch Marner on the right. The deep pairs, Cale Makar, Roman Josi, and Igor Shesterkin in net. Second team All-Stars, Jonathan Huberdeau, who also had 115 points. I believe Gaudreau had more goals. He had 40 that year. McDavid down the middle, Matthew Tkachuk on the right. So you had 2 Flames up front, you had 2 Leafs up front, and you had McDavid and you had Huberdeau, who was Florida and Edmonton. Hedman and McAvoy ends up getting the second team defenseman, and Markstrom is in net for the second team goaltender. The all-rookie team goes to Michael Bunting on the left wing, Lucas Raymond down the middle, Trevor Zegras on the right wing, Moritz Seider on the D, Alex Carrier on the D, and Jeremy Swayman, who is still not paid as of the time I'm recording this, as the goaltender for the all-rookie team. So, in terms of that, we'll get to the expansion draft for Seattle. Seattle did not get its way compared to Vegas in terms of moves that were made. They made some moves, but overall they kind of kept the roster they had. From Anaheim, they take Hayden Fleury. From Arizona, they take Tyler Pitlick, who they immediately traded to Calgary for a 4th-round pick. Boston, they get Jeremy Lauzon. Buffalo, they get Will Borgen. Calgary, they get Mark Giordano, who's their first captain, and only to this I still think no one's been named captain yet. Morgan Geekie from Carolina. John Quenneville from Chicago, who was a free agent, and they just let him go. I really wanted them to take DeHaan, and they didn't, and I was upset. Jonas Donskoy from Colorado. Gavin Bayreuther, who was also an unrestricted free agent, and he re-signed right with Columbus. Jamie Alexiak from Dallas. Dennis Chwalski from Detroit. Adam Larson from Edmonton. So as a result of the Taylor Hall trade, Edmonton gets nothing. Florida, they get Chris Driedger, who is now back in Florida. Curtis McDermott from the LA Kings, who they would trade to Colorado for a 4th-round pick. So they get 2 4th-round picks. They let 2 guys go. Other than that, we'll get to what they made one more move, I believe. Continuing, they get Carson Soucy from Minnesota, Cale Fleury from Montreal, Kelly Yarncroke from Nashville, Nathan Bastian from New Jersey, who they I want to say midway through the season they put him on waivers and New Jersey took him right back. They take Jordan Eberle from the Islanders, Colin Blackwell from the Rangers, Joey Decore from Ottawa, who's now, I believe, their starting goaltender, or whether they'll split him and Grubauer, we'll see. Towarski from Philadelphia. I've never heard of him. I don't know, probably was a minor leaguer or just never came over. Brandon Tanev from Pittsburgh, Alexander True from San Jose, minor leaguer. From St. Louis, they take Vince Dunn, who's their top defenseman. Yanni Gourde from Tampa Bay. Toronto, they take Jared McCann. And what was iconic about that is Pittsburgh traded McCann to Toronto so Toronto could protect someone. I don't remember who it was. I think it was Kerfoot. And then McCann goes on and becomes a very star player in Seattle. And then Cole Lind from Vancouver. Then they take Vanacek from Washington, so they were going to sign Grubauer. They had Drieger, they had Decord, and then they took Vanacek, and they trade Vanacek immediately right back to Washington for a second-round pick. So they get a free second-round pick right there. And then from Winnipeg, they take Mason Appleton, who I believe they traded back to Winnipeg halfway through the season. So overall, not the greatest lineup, but I still thought they could do some damage, especially when they signed Jaden Schwartz. They took Philip Grubauer, who I thought they would be better than 60 points. I really did. In terms of free agents, Blake Coleman signs with Calgary. There was a lot of free agents this year. Glendening signs with Dallas. Holtby signs with Dallas. Bunting signs with Toronto. Frederick Anderson with Carolina. Tucker Pullman with Vancouver on that horrible contract. Martin Jones in Philadelphia. Sean Kuraly in Columbus. Zach Hyman in Edmonton. Alex Goligoski in Minnesota. Cogliano with San Jose. Ceci with Edmonton. Bonino at San Jose. Simon with Pittsburgh. Halak with Vancouver. Suter with Dallas, because this is the year Parise and Suter are bought out. Elliott with Tampa Bay. Forbort with Boston. Paquette with Montreal. Nemeth with the Rangers. Ronto with Carolina. Savard, not Dennis Savard, not Serge Savard. David Savard with Montreal. Brossois with Vegas. Yandel with Philadelphia. Tenorti with the Rangers. Wenberg with Seattle. Bogosian with Tampa Bay. Mrazek with Toronto. Reimer with San Jose. Bernier with New Jersey. Ian Cole with Carolina. Luke Shen with Vancouver. Freddie Gaudreau with Minnesota. Nate Thompson with Philadelphia. Michael Amadio with Toronto. Petrovic with Dallas. Carter Hutton with Arizona. Del Zotto with Ottawa. That's Darren Radish with Tampa Bay, I want to say. Jujhar Khaira with Chicago. David Rittich with Nashville, who did not have a good go-around. Josh Levo with Carolina. Jaden Schwartz with Seattle. Jake McCabe with Chicago. Nick Patan with Vancouver. Brock McGinn with Pittsburgh. Philip Deneau with LA. Philip Grubauer with Seattle. Eric Holla with Boston. Alex Edler with LA. Thomas Nosek with Boston. Vinny Hinostroza with Buffalo. D. Giuseppe with Vancouver. Gavin Bayreuther with Columbus. David Camp with Toronto. Curtis Gabriel with Toronto. Belmar with Tampa Bay. D'Angelo with Carolina. Trevor Lewis with Calgary. Sheldon Dries with Vancouver. Dzingel with Arizona. Osterley with Detroit. O'Brien with Arizona. I'm trying to remember his first name. Who was Liam O'Brien with Arizona. John Hayden with Buffalo. Dougie Hamilton with New Jersey. Darren Helm with Colorado. Mike Hoffman with Montreal. Matt Tennyson with Nashville. Carl Dahlstrom with Calgary. Jack Johnson with Colorado. Gustafson with Chicago. VC with New Jersey. Brian Boyle with Pittsburgh. Pius Suter with Detroit. And I was upset the Hawks let Pius Suter go. AC Mont with Winnipeg. And then with Matt Irwin with Washington. Mick Ilrath with Washington. Derek Ryan with Edmonton. Mark Pysyk with Buffalo. Kyle Burrows with Vancouver. Brad Hunt with Vancouver. Linus Ullmark with Boston. Adam Clendening with Philadelphia. Nick Seeler with Philadelphia. Nick Foligno with Boston. Dmitry Kulikov with Minnesota. Yanni Hakanpää with Dallas. Ryan Donato with Seattle. Michael Rothel with Dallas. Craig Smith with... that's not Craig Smith. That's Brendan Smith with Carolina. Brandon Saad with St. Louis. Pontus Aberg with Ottawa. Greg Patterin with Anaheim, who's still kicking around. Corey Perry with Tampa Bay. Aaron Dell with Buffalo. Brent Seney with Toronto. Craig Anderson with Buffalo. Charlie Lindgren with St. Louis, who's now a goaltender in Washington. Matthew Perreault with Montreal for his last go-around. Ben Hutton with Vegas. Evgeny Svechnikov, not Andre, with Winnipeg. Evander Kane with Edmonton. Alex Chason with Vancouver. Andre Kasha with Toronto. Dan Heinen with Pittsburgh. Michael Carcone finally ends up in Arizona. Riley Nash with Winnipeg. Ryan Murray with Colorado. Trying to see Parise with the Islanders. Callie Rosen with St. Louis. Chatfield with Carolina. Buddy Robinson with Anaheim. Travis Boyd with Arizona. Zach Delphi with Florida. Dylan Sakura with Colorado. John Merrill with Minnesota. Alex Lyon with Carolina. Zdeno Chara with the Islanders, which was weirder than seeing him with Washington because he hadn't played with the Islanders in 20 years. Sam Carrick with Seattle. Nick Ritchie with Toronto. Nason signs with Carolina. Derek Stepan with Carolina. And I want to say, let me see if I can read these. Joe Thornton with Florida. Marcus Johansson with Seattle. Zach Ronaldo with Columbus. Tatar with New Jersey. Is that Sabrin with the, I want to say, let's say Islanders down there. That says, if I could read this, I can't even read my own writing. James Neal with St. Louis, Tyler Ennis with Ottawa, Alex Galchenyuk with Arizona, Louis Domingue with Pittsburgh, Carter Rowney with Detroit, Riley Sheahan with Seattle, Jordy Ben with Montreal, Gabranson signed with Calgary, Brassard with Philadelphia, and Sabrin, I think that says Ottawa. So there we go. That's a lot of names in free agency, a lot of notable names. And now we get into the trades because we got to go through the trades as well. Let me pull that up real quick on my phone because I should have had that up. NHL transactions. And as I'm recording this video, someone subscribed to my channel, so whoever did that just subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much for subscribing, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Trades, here we go. July 23rd, Buffalo makes one of the greatest moves they've ever made. They get Robert Hägg, along with a first and a second round pick from Philadelphia for Rasmus Ristolainen. Yeah, Philadelphia screwed that one up. The Rangers get Sammy Blais and a second round pick for Pavel Buchnevich going to St. Louis. I bet the Rangers wish they didn't do that. Vancouver drinks the stupid juice. They trade Jay Beagle, Louis Eriksson, Anton Roussel, a first, a second, and a seventh for Oliver Ekman-Larsson and Connor Garland. Garland I like a lot. Ekman-Larsson did not have a good go-around in Vancouver, but now he's won a Stanley Cup with Florida. The Hawks also drink the stupid juice. They get Seth Jones, a first-round pick, and a sixth-round pick for Adam Boqvist, a first-round pick, a second-round pick, and another first-round pick. I would have kept Boqvist and let him go, keep the first-round picks, and not take on Seth Jones. Because then we'd have even more cap space right now. Carolina gets a second-round pick. Columbus gets Jake Bean. Columbus gets Jacob Voracek. Philadelphia gets Cam Atkinson. So Voracek goes back to his original team, and Atkinson ends up at Philly. Buffalo gets Devin Levi and a first-round pick in exchange for Sam Reinhart going to Florida. That trade kind of works out for both teams as of right now. Arizona gets Vladislav Kolachonik, who's looks like a good top six defenseman in the minors for Arizona. Anton Stralman in a second for a seventh for Florida, so that's a cap dump for Stralman. Brendan Dillon goes to Winnipeg for 2 seconds to Washington. Marc-Andre Fleury goes to Chicago for Mikhail Hekarainen. And I remember it because it was my brother's birthday, and I took him to the park, and I saw it pop up on my phone, and I thought it was fake. I honestly thought it was fake. And I got so excited until the season started. July 27th, Curtis McDermott goes to Colorado for a fourth-round pick to Seattle. Winnipeg gets Nate Schmidt for Vancouver getting a third-round pick. Chicago also brings Tyler Johnson in on the same day, along with a second-round pick for Brent Seabrook's contract. So I thought that was a good deal for Chicago. They get rid of Seabrook's contract. They bring in Tyler Johnson, and they get a second-round pick out of it. And then Calgary gets Nikita Zadorov. Chicago gets a third. Carolina gets Ethan Bear. Edmonton gets Warren Foegele. Edmonton wins that deal, and I thought it was wild at the time that Carolina got rid of Foegele. Ottawa gets Nick Holden in a third. Vegas gets Evgeny Dadonov. Buffalo gets Will Butcher in a fifth. New Jersey gets future considerations. Calgary gets Vladar. Boston gets a third. Washington gets Vanacek for Seattle getting a second. We talked about that one. Arizona gets Connor Timmins, a first and a conditional third for Darcy Kemper going to Colorado. Ryan Reeves goes to the Rangers for a third going to Vegas. A third for Reeves is kind of crazy. All right. Future considerations goes to Tampa for Spencer Martin going to Vancouver. Now we go after the draft. Montreal gets Christian Dvorak for a conditional first and a second, I want to say. I'm trying to read this. Conditional first or a first and a second. So I think it's a first and a second. Zach Sanford goes to Ottawa for Logan Brown and a conditional fourth going to St. Louis. Florida gets Ali Ulevi. Vancouver gets Noel Juslin and Juho Lamico. So just a movement of depth guys. Ulevi was a bust. Ottawa gets Dylan Gambrell. San Jose gets a 7th-round pick. And then November 4th, 2021 was the trade we were all waiting for, the Jack Eichel deal. Of course, Vegas wins the Stanley Cup with Eichel, so it becomes worth it. But at the time, this was considered, whoa. Eichel and a conditional third go to Vegas for Peyton Krebs, Alex Tuch, a conditional first, and a second. So at the time, that was a big deal. Johnny Boychuk goes to Buffalo for Islanders getting future considerations. I believe that was a cap dump. Kyle Clifford goes to Toronto for St. Louis getting future considerations. That was probably a cap dump. And then Cole Sherwood goes to Nashville for Ottawa, getting future considerations. December 2nd, 2021, Chicago trades Malcolm Subban to Buffalo for future considerations because they had Fleury and Lankinen. December 9th, Chicago gets Curtis Gabriel for Chad Chris, who never developed as a defenseman, and to Toronto. New Jersey gets John Gillies. St. Louis gets future considerations. And January 5th, 2022, at this point, I believe Bowman was let go. And I think Kyle Davidson took over, and his first move, I believe, was he took Sam Lafferty. He took Sam Lafferty from Pittsburgh for Alex Nylander. Lafferty played great with the Hawks, and he turned that into picks. So overall, that was a great move by Kyle Davidson. Montreal gets the Hamburglar for Brandon Baddock going to Minnesota. Just want to point that out. February 14th, Calgary gets Tyler Toffoli for Emil Heimanen, Tyler Pitlick, and a first-round pick, along with a fourth and a fifth going to Montreal. Calgary was desperate, and they didn't get past the second round. Arizona gets Nick Ritchie in a conditional second. Toronto gets Ryan Dzingel and Ilya Lyubushkin. Nick Ritchie did not work out in Toronto, so they traded him to Arizona, where he plays fantastic right away in typical Leafs fashion. Toronto gets Carter Hutton. Arizona gets future considerations because they had a lot of goalie injuries at that season. Alex Stalock goes to San Jose. Edmonton gets future considerations. Colorado gets Josh Manson. Anaheim gets Drew Helleson in a second on March 14th. Colorado gets Nico Sturm. Minnesota gets Tyson Jost. The Rangers get Frank Vetrano. The Florida gets a conditional fourth round pick. And for what Frank Vetrano was last year, imagine if Vetrano was also on Florida. That team would be unstoppable offensively. Florida drinks the stupid juice. They get Ben Sherratt as a rental for Ty Similik, a conditional first, and a fourth going to Montreal. A first for Ben Sherratt was insane at the time, still is. Calgary gets Kelly Youngkrook, who didn't fully work out there, from Seattle for a second, a third, and a seventh. Chicago and Tampa Bay make a huge deal. Chicago gets Boris Kachuk, who I had no clue who that was at the time. Taylor Radish, who was a good prospect at the time, no longer in Chicago. A first-round pick, another first-round pick. Tampa Bay gets Brandon Hagel and 2/4. I was upset that we traded Hagel because he was a good young player, and I thought he was exactly what we needed to rebuild. But we got Oliver Moore, we got younger with those, and then we were trying to not be good anyway, so we were going for Bedard the next year. So it makes sense why we got rid of one of our best players then. And Hagel has thrived in Tampa Bay. He's my favorite player on the Lightning, and I'll always love him. Anaheim gets a third-round pick. Minnesota gets Nick Delorier, wholly overpay. Anaheim gets John Moore, Urho Vakanainen, a first and 2 seconds. Boston gets Cody Curran and Hampus Lindholm, who's signed an 8-year extension there. March 19th, Florida gets Claude Giroux, Connor Bauman, German Rubasov, and a fifth. Philadelphia gets Owen Tippett, a first and a third. So Philadelphia, they were picking up assets right there, and Florida traded out basically all of their picks to get this team. And that's why they don't have many picks right now. Buffalo gets a 6th-round pick. Florida gets Robert Hagg, so Florida picking up depth. Ottawa gets Travis Hamonic. Vancouver gets a 3rd-round pick, which was at the time considered crazy because Hamonic's contract was considered a burden, not an asset. Detroit gets a 7th-round pick. LA gets Troy Stetcher. Toronto gets a 3rd-round pick. Vancouver gets Travis Dermott. Toronto gets Colin Blackwell and Mark Giordano. And Seattle gets 2 seconds and a third. They were stocking up on draft picks. Ottawa gets Matthew Joseph and a 4th. Tampa gets Nick Paul, who's been really good in their lineup. Dallas gets Scott Wedgwood. Arizona gets a conditional 3rd and a 4th and on March 20th, 2022. Nashville gets Jeremy Lauzon for a 2nd-round pick going to Seattle. So Seattle had like 7 2nd-round picks at this point. That's on March 20th. Winnipeg also trades Mason Appleton to Winnipeg, or Seattle trades Mason Appleton to Winnipeg for a 4th-round pick going to Seattle. Pittsburgh gets Nathan Beaulieu for a conditional 7th to Winnipeg. Jack McBain, who refused to play in Minnesota, gets traded to Arizona on March 21st for a 2nd-round pick going to Minnesota. Bit overvalued, but Arizona had the draft picks. Arizona then takes Brian Little and Nathan Smith, and Winnipeg gets a 4th-round pick. They were just dumping Brian Little's contract. Chicago then trades Marc-Andre Fleury. As I was at the bank, I remember that day. I remember I was sitting at the bank and saw it pop up on my phone. They get a 2nd-round pick, essentially, for Marc-Andre Fleury going to Minnesota. Seattle gets Daniel Sprong and a 4th and a 6th for Marcus Johansson to Washington. which I found funny because I thought Daniel Sprong was the better player. Johansson that year I didn't think was great. Minnesota gets Jacob Middleton. San Jose gets Kaapo Kähkönen in a 5th going to San Jose. The Rangers get Justin Braun for a 3rd to Philadelphia. Edmonton gets Brent Kulak for William Lagesson and a conditional 2nd and a 7th going to Montreal. Josh Brown goes to Boston along with a conditional 6th for Zach Senyshyn and a 5th going to Ottawa. Colorado gets Arturi Lehkonen along for Justin Barron and a 2nd-round pick going to Montreal. Detroit gets Oscar Sundqvist, Jake Wallman in a 2nd for Nick Leddy and Luke Witkowski going to St. Louis. Johan Larsson goes to Washington for a 3rd-round pick going to Arizona. For Johan Larsson was insane at the time. There was a lot of trades made at this deadline, a lot of big deals, and then there was a lot of stupid trades made throughout the year. Ottawa, a 5th-round pick for Zach Sanford going to Winnipeg, who's now an AHLer basically. Andrew Cogliano goes to Colorado. And remember, this is only 2 years ago now. Cogliano goes to Colorado for a 5th-round pick to San Jose. Hammond gets moved to New Jersey for Nate Schnarr going to Montreal. Nick Merkley goes to the Rangers for Anthony Batista going to San Jose. Merkley never developed at all. He was highly thought of prospect. Mott goes to the Rangers for a 4th going to Vancouver. Brassard goes to the Oilers for a 4th-round pick going to Philadelphia. Carpenter goes to Calgary for a 5th-round pick going to Chicago. Domestikov goes to Dallas for a 4th-round pick going to Detroit. Are you seeing a pattern here with the way trades are being done at this point? Tampa Bay gets Riley Nash for future considerations to Arizona. The Rangers get Andrew Kopp in a 6th for Morgan Barron, a conditional 1st, and a 2nd-round pick, I think, along with a 5th going to St. Louis, or Winnipeg, if I can read that right. It's kind of weird how that's written out. Anaheim gets Zach Aston Reese, Dominic Simone in a 2nd. Pittsburgh gets Rickard Rakell. Victor Rask goes to Seattle for future considerations. Florida gets Max Domi in a 3-way deal, along with a 6th for Tyler Aminoto. Carolina ends up then with Max Domi for Igor Korshkunov going to Florida. And Carolina ends up with Tyler Amamoto and Aiden Hurstchuk going to Columbus. And yeah, other trades, Ben Bishop's contract in the 7th would go to Dallas. Evgeny Dadonov would end up with Montreal after the season since Vegas failed to trade him. There was the failed trade between them and Ottawa, which lasted in Ottawa losing a draft pick. Montreal gets Evgeny Dadonov. Vegas gets Shea Weber's contract. LA gets Kevin Fiala for Brock Faber and a 1st going to Minnesota. Both teams pretty happy with that. Columbus gets Matthew Olivier for a 4th-round pick going to Nashville. And Ryan McDonough goes to Nashville for Felipe Myers and Grant Mishmash going to Tampa Bay. That concludes today's video. A lot of trades, a lot of free agents, a lot of everything. The points were high, a new high of teams. The playoffs had a high scoring. The scoring was up again. Everything was flying high in 21-22. And it was that the NHL was back. And I think we've kind of hit this 3-year stride. Scoring, I think, is going to start dropping off now. It's already started this season, I thought. So we'll see how this continues to develop. We got 2 more seasons left, and hopefully I can get them done. I want to thank you all so much for watching this video if you made it all the way through, and even if you didn't. And have a great day. Have a good one.